Hi, I'm David Levine. I'm co-chair of Science Writers in New York. I want to thank Joe Bonner for setting this up and doing the taping. And my guest tonight is Helen Fisher, a biological anthropologist and senior research fellow at the Kinsey Institute in Indiana University. She studies the evolution, the brain systems, and cross-cultural patterns of romantic love, mate choice, marriage, adultery, divorce, gender differences in the brain, personality, temperament, business personalities, and the biology of leadership styles. She served as the chief scientific advisor to Match.com and has written 6 internationally best-selling books, including Anatomy of Love. Helen, thank you for being with us. You were with us a year ago during I think in the summer, when the pandemic was at full height, and we talked about the pandemic's effect on dating, and also since then you've gotten married.
Yes,
so congratulations, and we're very happy for you. And I guess a lot of people have also gotten divorced during the pandemic. I know in Wuhan, China, they actually closed down the offices because too many people were filing for divorce. So anyways, I guess my first question is, what's changed between now and the last year for dating in the pandemic?
Well, it's so interesting because when we spoke last time, it was the height of the pandemic, and I had made some predictions about what I thought would be the changes. And since then, I put so is this correct? I mean, anyway, the bottom line is since then, I did an annual study with Match called Singles in America. This is a study that I do every single year. We poll 5,000 Americans, every age group, age 18 to 71 plus, a rural, suburban, urban, Black, white, Asians, Latino, gay, straight, trans, etc. It's a national representative sample of singles based on the US Census. We do not poll the Match members, so it's real science. And we did that study, we collected the study, the data in July, which was the height of the pandemic. And all of that data has come in. And what was most interesting to me was the rise of video chatting. And I actually had predicted it prior to this pandemic. About 6% of singles of all ages did video chatting. What they did is they got introduced on the internet, and that's what all these sites are, is introducing sites. They're not dating sites. All they do is introduce you. So prior to the pandemic, they were being introduced on the web, and then meeting in person. And I predicted that because we're all stuck at home, there's going to be a rise of video chatting. And in fact, 1 out of 5 of our 5,000 people, so 1,000 people, have started video chatting. And what we found among them is that they're having much longer conversations. They're having more meaningful conversations. They're showing more honesty and transparency. They're expressing more self-disclosure, and there's good academic data that self-disclosure does lead to intimacy, and men are just as much disclosing as women are. And there seems to be less focus on what you look like and what a potential date looks like, and much more focus on whether a potential partner has a full-time job and whether they're financially stable. So it really is intentional dating. And I think what we're going to see is the continuation of that even after the pandemic is over, because it's easy. I mean, sex is off the table. I mean, if you're just meeting somebody on the internet and chatting for hours, you get over that awkward thing. You don't have to hold their hand or decide whether you're going to kiss and hug or whatever. Money is off the table. And you can get to know somebody. And so I do think that this will continue, that video chatting will continue because it's so practical. They are using it as a vetting process. Over 68% of singles say, yes, I started because I wanted to vet the person. I guess 54% of the people actually said that during video chatting, they would not want to go out in person. And something like 65% of people said, yes, I now realize that I do want to go out with the person even more. So I think we're going to have fewer first dates, but I think we're going to have more meaningful first dates. And really, I think we're going to be kissing fewer frogs.
Okay, but you've always said to me that you really can't tell if you're attracted to a person until you meet them.
Well,
in person?
yeah, but you know, you see a lot, you meet a lot on the internet. I mean, you
Okay.
see the way they smile and laugh, you see what their, at least their upper body, you know, you see their environment where they live. 35% of these singles are having actually a meal, having a drink with somebody on the internet during the video chatting. I think a little bit less are actually having a meal, and they're playing games together. You get to know a lot about somebody just by interacting on the internet. As a matter of fact, which really, it didn't surprise me, but it would probably surprise most people. When we asked, did you fall in love during the video chat, 50% of these singles last July, in the middle of this pandemic, on the internet, fell in love. And 56% felt some sort of chemistry towards somebody. So you can fall in love just through love letters and not have met anybody else. You know, it's the basic brain system. You know, David and I you and I have talked about this a lot. I mean, I studied this brain system, and we've put over 100 people into a brain scanner. It's a basic brain system, and it can be triggered instantly, just the way fear can be triggered instantly, or anger, or surprise can be triggered instantly. It can be triggered instantly under the right circumstances. And in fact, that's what we're seeing. That in fact, Match is calling this a dating renaissance. But what it really is people are getting serious. They are noticing, oh my gosh, I've been alone too long. They're changing their priorities. The bad boy, the bad girl are out, and intentional, long-term looking for love is now more and more in.
Have subscriptions to these services gone up?
Yes, wildly up.
Wildly up.
Not just in Match, but apparently a great many of them. Yes, it's
Okay.
booming.
So I've
I mean,
also
I'm not in
heard,
that part of their business. I'm their chief science advisor, but that's what I have been told.
now you and I talked about once about people you think that eventually people will post their credit scores?
Oh, yes. Oh, you remember
Okay.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. But I've heard that people are posting their vaccination status.
Yeah,
So that makes it easier to meet in person.
absolutely. And by the
Yeah.
way, it's the young who are the most paranoid about meeting in person. And I really wondered why until you and I actually had a discussion recently. And it suddenly occurred to me that, you know, the young have to reproduce. They got to find a partner and reproduce, and send their DNA on into tomorrow. It's a drive. It's a romantic love is an attachment. They're basic drives. Actually, they come out of the most primitive brain regions linked with drive. And I'm not surprised they're putting their vaccination status on, because it's well, I don't know, anthropologists would call it virtue signaling. You're signaling, okay, I am responsible. I'm taking caution, and I'm a good bet. I am a good bet. I think that they are signaling that they are worthy of meeting.
Okay, so they're looking for someone, they're not looking for the bad boy, bad girl, they're looking for someone, you know, who they can really have a long-standing relationship.
Yep,
And,
more and more are. And
yeah.
what's interesting about that is it's part of a much larger trend that I call slow love. I mean,
Okay.
for the last 20 or so years, people are marrying later and later. They used to marry in the 50s in their very early 20s. Now they're marrying in their late 20s, which is giving, I call it the pre-commitment stage, is just really expanding this slow love. The young, they're actually, I call them the new Victorians. I mean, they're very serious about things. Everybody thinks they're very casual. They might be having their one night stands as a vetting process. I'm beginning to think that some of these are sex interviews. But the bottom line is they are not casual about dating. 40% of singles today want to reach self acceptance before they catch feelings. Self-acceptance. Now that's honorable. 1/3 of them want to begin a good career and be financially stable. So it's a very serious generation. And what's going on with this video chatting and the pandemic, it is slowing down even more a process that has been going on for quite a while, which I call slow love. And the beauty of that is that I've looked in 80 cultures through the demographic yearbooks of the United Nations. And as it turns out, the longer you court and the later you marry, the more likely you are to stay together. So as it slows down, all this courtship slows down, people become more cautious, marry much later, they're more likely to stay together. And I got a second statistic on this, which really fascinated me. Came out of University of Chicago. There was an interesting study that said that if you meet somebody on the internet, as opposed to off the internet, not just Match, but anywhere on the internet, as opposed to off the internet, you're less likely to divorce. And I thought to myself, how can that be? What does it make any difference why you meet somebody? And you meet them in school, you meet them in church, you meet them on the street, you meet them in, what difference does it make? And so I did my own study, once again with Match, but not measuring Match members. And I looked at people who date on the internet as opposed to off the internet. And I found that people who date on the internet are more likely to be fully employed, more likely to have advanced education, and more likely to be looking for a long-term commitment. So here are two American and I think world trends. We're marrying later, which is going to create more stable partnerships, and we're meeting on the internet, which is actually a step also towards more stable partnerships. So we may be looking for a few decades of relative family stability. I do emphasize the word relative. I mean, I've studied divorce in 80 cultures too, and people do tend to divorce, but it may be remain stable or even go down.
Okay, so I want to talk about the pandemic specifically. I was reading an article that Tinder went global. You could look for people globally. And I was thinking, what the heck? I mean, you can't really, the odds of meeting someone who lives in Sweden or South Africa, and when you can't go to these countries. So what was the point of that?
They're looking for love.
Okay.
You know, they're looking for love. And if they haven't found, you know, I mean, during this pandemic, you got a lot of time.
That's true. Yeah.
And at the very least, you can have good, interesting conversations with people. That's a very interesting point, David, because, you know, in the past, I've done this Singles in America study with Match for 10 years. So we got data on 50,000 Americans, 5,000 every year. So, and prior to this pandemic, people did not want to go out with somebody who lived more than 3 hours away. And if more and more people are looking in other countries, I think it's once again changing your priorities. Okay, if I can't find it, I'm stuck in this house with my parents. I'm not going anywhere for months and months. I might as well just look around the world.
Okay. So last summer, it was easier to meet people because you could actually, meet a person in a park. You know, I mean, but the pandemic went on. The winter is pretty grim. You know, if you live in the Northeast or, a European country for meeting people, because you can't go in many places. I mean, in Washington, D.C., the Smithsonian has been closed.
Yeah.
So the natural places that you would actually meet someone, like a coffee shop or these kinds of things. So is that also the fact that you can't actually meet, there are so few places to meet people, is that also driving the video chat?
Oh my God, yes, they're stuck at home.
Yeah.
But also the video chat is, you can have very long conversations. I mean, the vast majority of us work and we spend time getting up in the morning, getting dressed and getting prepared and doing the traveling and getting to the office and coming home and seeing parents and friends and relatives and sweethearts, etc. It's all gone. You got enough time to talk to somebody. And that's exactly what we're seeing. More meaningful conversations, longer conversations, honesty and transparency and self-disclosure, earnestness. They are earnest. So absolutely. I mean, Cupid is beating COVID. There's all kinds of people who would have spent a lot of time just going out with their friends, seeing their parents, running their daily lives, who are now looking for a partner. I mean, I don't want to say there's anything good about this pandemic. Absolutely not. But I'm afraid to say, in terms of love, it has spurred people to look for love, long-term love.
Well, does it make neighbors and roommates a little more attractive?
Did you read you must have read our
I did.
release. Yeah. 1 out of 4 people, I think it was 1 out of 4, you might remember, I've forgotten this.
40%.
What?
40%, I think.
40%.
Maybe not, maybe lower. I don't remember exactly.
Well, whatever it is, it was plenty
It was high,
of people started having sex in a relationship with somebody who they had never regarded as a romantic partner. And in fact, when we saw this data, I mean, you know, they didn't see this person as a romantic partner at all. And in fact, then they started staying in with this individual and having sex and romance with them. And what's so interesting to me about that is it doesn't surprise me. It did surprise my colleagues at Match. They couldn't understand, and even my husband, they couldn't understand, well, if you don't have any kind of, you know, romantic connection with somebody, why, when you're stuck in a room with them for the 8 months, why would you then, you know, start to really like them? I think it's quite the reverse. I mean, an awful lot of these cases, you know, it's 3 or 4 people in an apartment, at least in New York. They're always out with their other friends. They're just coming and going. They're all living in the same place only because they don't have any money to live separately. And now they're all stuck together. And what are they doing? I know some of these people, they're playing games, they're playing charades, they're watching TV programs together, they're cooking together, they're getting to know each other. And all of the academic data shows that the more you get to know somebody, the more you like them and the more you think that they are like you. So being penned up with people can go either way. Either you never want to see them again, or you can fall for them. You know, you started off this conversation with the fact that there's so many divorces in Wuhan after the pandemic and that they had to shut down the offices. What's interesting is that's only half of the conversation. They did not list how many people wanted to marry or wanted to renew their vows or met somebody on the internet. We're always hearing the negative. And the bottom line is, we don't know how many people in Wuhan suddenly realized that that girl that they're rooming with is just much prettier than they thought, or that this marriage is much better than I had realized because we were not spending any real time together, et cetera. So you're always hearing the bad part of the puzzle. But in this particular case, as I said, 50% of the people on these video chats, and it's solid scientific data, fell in love.
Well, Wuhan had very strict lockdowns with the police in the streets who would shoot you if you came out. So
I know.
So it's a little different, hard to compare.
Well, the
so-
bottom line is we're just comparing Wuhan. All I'm saying is that those people we hear all about the divorces in Wuhan, but we don't hear about the marriages
That's
and
true.
the good relations. We don't hear about that.
Okay. So for the people listening, and thank you for listening, if you have a question for Helen, please put it in the Q&A box, which is at the bottom. Don't put it in the chat box, as we don't really look at that, and that's more for technical problems that we have. So I do have a question from someone in the audience. Do you recommend people use dating services, sites, or other means to find like-minded people? And if you both have been vaccinated, can you forego testing if you decide to become intimate?
So I'm bad at remembering 2 questions. So hang on to that second one and tell it to me.
Okay.
But for the first one, do I recommend dating sites? You know, I'm not in the should business of what you should do and what you shouldn't do, but let me just say that I study this with Match every single year. Once again, I don't poll the Match members, national representative sample. And this past year, 2020, 40% of singles met their last first date on some introducing site, some dating site. Only 16% met through a friend, and only 2% met in a bar. So we ask that question every single year, and certainly for the last 7 or 8 years, it's just increasing more and more the people who are doing their dating, they're introducing on the internet rather than through friends. And you know, I even spoke one time to a guy who was, he was a head of it was something like the Bar and Restaurant Association of America. And he said, Helen, they're not coming in here to meet people. They're coming in with groups of friends and all getting on Tinder or Match or wherever together. So it does seem to be the primary way to do it. I will caution about 2 things. There's nothing wrong with the internet. The issue is we don't know how to use it. It's too new. The technology is too new. And so singles make 2 enormous mistakes. One of them is that they binge. They'll just, and the issue is that, I mean, I study the brain, and it's not my data, but the bottom line is we now know that the brain has a sweet spot of about 5 to 9 choices. And after you've gotten 9 choices, looked at about 9 people, you begin to get what they call cognitive overload or the paradox of choice, and you begin to choose nobody. Now, Match has known this all along. They try to get you to look at just a few people because the more you see, the less you pick anybody at all. So if you're going to use the internet, what I would certainly do, just knowing about the brain, is after you've met 9 people, and I mean met by video chatting or met in person, but seen them, heard them, seen them smile, the way they move, what they say, etc. Met 9 people, stop. Get off the site if you're serious about meeting somebody and get to know at least one of those 9 better. So don't binge, number 1. And number 2, think of reasons to say yes. There's a huge brain region linked with what scientists call negativity bias. It's a basic brain region. We remember the negative. It evolved, it's a huge brain region. It evolved millions of years ago to remember. I mean, you know, it's nice to remember who your friends are, but if you don't remember who your enemies are, you could die. So the brain is built to remember the negative. So when you meet somebody for the first time, you have very little information about them. So you'll suddenly say, oh, he's got brown shoes, that'll never work. Oh, it doesn't seem, oh, she likes cats and I like dogs, this will never work. Forget about it. If they got, you know, focus on the positive, beat the brain system for negativity bias. So don't binge and think of reasons to say yes. Those are the 2 things. And I can certainly give you some advice on how to write a profile and the mistakes that people make there, but if anybody's interested. And there was a second question.
So I'm not sure you can actually, you shouldn't be giving medical advice, but if you both have been vaccinated, can you forego testing if you decide to become intimate?
Yeah, I'll skip it. You know,
Okay.
there's all kinds of medical people that would say, you know, who've got an opinion on that.
Well,
It's a very good question.
I do know the CDC guidelines that you can actually, if 2 people are vaccinated, they can be in the same room together without a mask. But beyond that, I'm not gonna, I don't know.
Well, and if you're without a mask and you're within a foot of them, I mean, you know, strikes me, you know, the drive to love is a very powerful brain system. Emanates from a tiny little factory near the base of the brain called the VTA, or ventral tegmental area. That little, and it pumps out dopamine, gives you that intense feeling of romance. And that little factory lies right next to the factory that orchestrates thirst and hunger. Thirst and hunger keep you alive today. Romantic love and feelings of attachment drive you to form a partnership and send your DNA into tomorrow. So these are survival mechanisms. That's what we call them in academia, survival mechanisms. Romantic love, that brain circuitry for romantic love and the brain circuitry for attachment. So people who, you know, once you get that mask off and you begin to really like somebody, it is my guess that an awful lot of people will say, well, we're both vaccinated. I've spoken to you for months through video chatting. I know who you are. I know you're not lying to me. And they'll probably start in on making love. That's my hypothesis, my prediction.
Okay, so, you know, before the pandemic, we had Skype, we had FaceTime, WhatsApp, you can, Facebook Messenger, you can see people. So why do you think people never really said, I want to talk to you before I, you know, on Skype and before I meet you?
Because for millions of years, we didn't have the internet.
Okay.
For millions of years, you met that boy at the other side of the water hole in your little hunting and gathering group. You wanted to get to, we are mammals. We are built to meet in person. I mean, we certainly are built to meet in person. What this is going to turn into is a vetting device. You know, not to really get to know somebody, but to talk to them long enough so that you realize, oh, geez, I don't want to spend my money on this. I don't want to deal with the sex. I don't want to get all dressed. Or, right, I'm going to go do this. So it's going to end up being a very practical vetting device.
Okay, so here's 2 questions about profiles. One, I would love to hear what you have to say about how to write a profile.
Yeah.
And the second one is, what mistakes do people make in writing profiles?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I will start off with the obvious here. I mean, you don't want to, okay. So first of all, 68% of singles actually read the profile. They're not all just looking at the picture and swiping left to right. They're reading the profile. So it is important to pay attention to this. So first of all, what Match would probably recommend is six pictures of yourself. A real good picture of your face, a real good picture of your entire body, a picture of you at work, a picture of you at home, a picture of you doing some sort of hobby, and I can't remember what the last one is. Oh yeah, a picture of you dressed up. So 6 good pictures of you. And in that picture, don't stand in front of a beautiful sailboat unless you own that sailboat. I mean, it's false advertising, or don't make yourself so tiny that that's all you can see is mountains. Certainly don't put yourself in a group of other women or men so that you really don't know who the person is. Don't wear clothes that are too tight. Don't wear things that are sexy. Skip the sex in the beginning. You can do things that are trying to be romantic, but skip the sex things in the beginning. So that's the photographs, and you should keep refreshing them too. And then in terms of the actual profile, I mean, just from some of the basics, you got to spell correctly. You got to skip the adjectives. You got to use good grammar. Singles actually really care about grammar. You got to be upbeat. You got to be positive. No drama. No negativity. People just do not like that. It's good to be revealing, to talk about who you are, to be honest. If you can be funny, try it. A little quote from somebody that's funny or whatever. Laughter drives up the dopamine system in the brain. It's a feel-good chemical, gives you optimism, energy, focus, motivation. So if you can do some laughter, that's good. Be confident. It's amazing. Confidence is becomes more important than looks. Singles want somebody who is confident and realistic. Show your values, but skip the cliches. I mean, I cannot tell you, I have read so many of these on all kinds of dating sites, and I say, well, I like to walk in the moonlight near the ocean, or I like to cuddle up in front of a fire and drink wine. It's been said 1 billion times. Say some things that are really you, and be specific. Instead of saying, I care for people, say, once a month I work in a soup kitchen on Sundays, and once a week I go to an animal shelter and try to play with the animals so they aren't so bored. Details, details, details. And let's see, what else? There certainly are
Politics.
that politics is an important one. The amount of politics, we studied this in July. And what's interesting is prior to the pandemic, well, in the last 2 years, the ones knowing the other person's political views has jumped up 25%, from something like 43% of singles said it's important for me to know this person's politics, and it jumped up to 60 something percent. Yes, and of course it's been the Trump era, and I think that has divided people. So we really do see more and more people who are not willing to get into a relationship with somebody with a different political views, and they want to know right away too. Singles want to know right away. These are very transparent people. And one other thing, and so you could say your politics right off the bat. A lot of people want to know, I think over 50% of singles, I'm not quite sure that number, want to know prior to the first date. And these are the things you can find out by video chatting, etc. Last but not least, instead of saying, I would like him to be thus and such, say, I would like you to be thus and such. It creates an intimacy. So the other thing is, when you get a response from somebody, write back. I mean, this love runs on messages. They've got to be returned. And so
what if you don't like the person or not attracted?
Well, then everybody handles this differently. I mean, this whole term of ghosting is,
okay.
But it's so interesting. People think, oh, ghosting is such a new thing. Well, I mean, look at the old cowboy movies when, a man sails into town on his big pony and and the girl swept off her feet, and then he rides out of town the next day. So when that ghost is not the first thing on the planet.
I hope he's right. I hope he's riding into town on a horse, not a pony.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. Yeah. But anyway, the bottom line is.
So what about sites that don't have profiles? Like Tinder really doesn't, their pictures.
Yeah, well, what they've got is, I've never been on Tinder, so, but what they've got is you both have to respond.
Right.
That was a genius thing. And actually, I know the woman who well, I'm not sure, she, for Match, who, Match, Tinder's a match site, Match has 25 of them, something. But anyway, that was a genius step, and I don't know, I've never been on Tinder. Do you know anybody on Tinder? You do say a couple things about yourself, right? That
you don't have
like
to.
Jazz, and I like.
You don't have to. Yeah,
you don't have to.
My children have been on it, but they also, my daughter liked Bumble because she said that
she can choose.
She can, yeah. The woman has to respond first.
Right. Exactly.
If you two like, so she liked that thing.
I think we're going to see more and more boutique sites too. People who play tennis, people who like cats, people who like to sail, people who read Shakespeare. I think that, it's just the newest way to do it. David, it's the newest way to do the same old thing to meet people.
All right. So what about matchmakers? Because you're getting very young, hip matchmakers who say they can help you.
I think that a lot of people will go for it. I've made quite a few speeches at the Matchmakers Institute of America, and they were all young, beautiful women. And I think any way you meet people, I mean, matchmakers is ancient, in Asia, in India, Japan, and China, and probably a lot of those other Asian societies have had matchmakers for a long period of time. And in fact, let's go back, I'm an anthropologist, so let's go back to hunting and gathering societies. Even then, I would guess, we've had the same brain for the last 300,000 years. So, in the dry season, they would assemble at the only available big water holes, and about 500 people from different hunting and gathering bands. And, your mother might be in another, and your brother in another, et cetera. And they would all say to you, well, I know a boy who you might like, my sister's husband has a younger brother, or whatever. So the idea of matchmakers is very old. And I think that they will continue.
There are also people who will write a profile for you.
Isn't that interesting? Yes.
Yeah. What do you think about that?
I like the idea of that, because it's amazing how poorly we think of ourselves.
Okay.
And it's amazing. And people have said to me, literally people have said to me, I never thought that my job, at, I don't know, wherever, was very impressive. But my girlfriend who wrote the profile really beefed that up, because she thinks that's cool. So I think in many respects, we don't know who we are, and it's very useful. I would say, it's a wonderful thought of yours that not only, maybe you should write the rough draft and then have your friends, because other people see parts of you that you just don't see. You think you're too fat and they think you're gorgeous. You think that you're not tall enough and they think that you're just perfect. So I would definitely get other people's opinions. And for millions of years, they did. Once a young girl came back to her little, group and said to her mother and her brother and everything, well, I met this guy. A lot of them would chime in and say, well, I know he's a really good hunter. And, I know that she's very industrious and you're very thus and such. And so, we've always had help in courtship. And this, and now with video chatting, video dating, it's, as I say, it's the newest way to do the same old thing, meet people.
Okay. So another question, because I don't have many questions here, so please ask questions. Now I have two. Okay. What is the average number of frogs one has to kiss before meeting the right one? Is there they asked Woody Allen, he was on Dick Cavett, he had a cold. And he said, and Dick Cavett said, do you think you have more or less colds than the average person? And Woody Allen said, I have exactly the same amount of colds as the average person. So
I think I'm going to have to say that with frogs. No, I think that some people are much more picky than others. And so they're going to kiss fewer frogs. I don't. Something like 35% are not going to have sex until they marry. I mean, there's a whole large religious contingent and people now who are scared of the COVID and scared to get back out there, and they're going to be kissing fewer frogs. There's always a certain percentage of people that just don't give a damn. I mean, well, I always ask, what percentage of people, you can't ask, do you sleep around, because they'll probably lie to you. But, but you can ask, and I would say, every single year in the Singles in America study, we ask, what are you looking for? And one of the boxes you can check is, I just want to meet a lot of people. And that is a signal to me and to my colleagues at Match that these people probably just aren't serious about looking for somebody. They just want to sleep around. And we ask that almost every year. Some years as few as 8% will say that, sometimes as much as 11%. So just about 90% of people who are on these introducing sites actually are looking for some kind of stable partnership. And they're very rosy about it. 89% of singles believe that when you meet the right person, you can stay together forever. 89%.
Okay, so we got a lot more questions. So thank you for responding to that. Before the pandemic, people would sometimes hire a private investigator to check out a potential mate or spouse. I know who wrote this, a friend of mine who's a lawyer. Do you think this practice increased or decreased as a result of the increase in dating over the internet?
I don't know the answer.
Okay.
But I do think that I read recently, I think, was it Match? It was some dating site that is beginning to institute some sort of policy. There's ethics in that too. There's some problems. I mean, in other words, in the article, they were saying, well, for example, some people will have a drunk driving or some sort of misdemeanor, and it's not wiped off. It's proven that the person didn't do whatever that was, some sort of family violence, and it goes to court, and it's proven that that person did not commit those crimes. But yet it sort of stays lingering on the internet, and they carry old crosses on their backs for things that they did not do. So it sounds appealing at first gander, at first sight, that you'd like to know about somebody's background. But then there is the problems of the fact that, some people were never convicted of those crimes or did their penance years and years and years ago. They're much older, they've grown up, and still they're carting this around with them. So it's an issue. I don't know how I feel about it, but I do know that most people, what I say is, meet in a public place in the late afternoon for 20 minutes, have a cup of coffee, tell your friends where you're going, don't go to his apartment, don't have 10 drinks with him until 3 a.m. I mean, just be smart. I don't see why. I mean, people think, well, it's safe to walk into a bar where you know nobody. Isn't this safer than what we were doing in the past? Now, very often one of the problems with the internet is that, if you meet through a friend, your friend can tell you quite a bit about the person. You can have your own, violence checks through a friend if they know about it. But the bottom line is, it's a complicated question, and I know that Match and probably other dating sites are working on how they should handle that.
Now
How do you feel about that, David?
How do I feel about that?
Yeah.
Well, I know that some of that Match, and I think Tinder, that you can get verified. The person can be verified. And I guess they do that through email. I'm not sure how they do it, but you have to put
And
in some.
verified in what way? That they don't have any,
They're
what, they didn't
verified.
murder?
They're verified as being who they are.
Oh, well, that makes a lot of sense.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, 'cause
That makes a lot of sense.
you don't want to go out and meet little Charlie Manson, right?
Well,
So,
you certainly don't want to.
no.
Well, listen, even if it's Charlie Manson, for God's sake, stay in a public place, have a cup of coffee, and don't pursue it. If you get any weird feelings, this is going on forever. I mean, when we used to walk into a bar and we liked some kind of guy, we didn't know who he was.
No.
And a certain number of people, I'm in a baby boomer, we were much more sexual than the young today. And a lot of people were going off for their one night stands and not taking any precautions. There's nothing new about this.
Okay, so let's go to some other questions. Does geographic location have an impact on online dating success?
Yes.
Okay, so are you more likely to meet people in a metropolitan area like San Francisco than you are in a rural location? I guess you would have. I guess you would have to.
There's more people in public in big cities, but it's the kind of person. I study personality, and I've created a questionnaire that's now been taken by 15 million people in 40 countries, and I've come to realize and prove in the brain that we've evolved 4 very broad styles of thinking and behaving, linked with the dopamine, serotonin, testosterone, and estrogen systems in the brain. I wrote a whole book on it called Why Him, Why Her. But the bottom line is, in the big cities, there's many more people of a certain style of thinking and behaving expressed by the dopamine system. These people tend to be risk-taking, novelty-seeking, curious, creative, spontaneous, energetic, mentally flexible people. I call them explorers. People in the rural areas, all through the Midwest, express more of the traits in the serotonin system. I call them builders. They're more traditional, conventional, follow the rules, respect authority, detail-oriented, often more religious, but not always. There's a gene in the serotonin system linked with religiosity. So the bottom line is, your person says, are you going to meet more people in rural or urban areas? You're going to meet certain kinds of people in rural and urban areas. Now, for example, all around Washington, D.C., there's an awful lot of men and women who are very high testosterone. I call these directors. Analytical, logical, direct, decisive, tough-minded, skeptical, politically very active men and women. In the Northeast and the Northwest, you find many more high estrogen men and women who are contextual, long-term thinkers, imaginative, good at reading posture, gesture, tone of voice, more nurturing, more trusting, and more emotionally expressive. So the bottom line is, where are you going to meet people? You're gonna meet people everywhere. There's going to be more people living in a city than in the countryside. But do you want to meet that kind of person? So it's more complicated than just location. Certain genetic styles of thinking and behaving gravitate to certain parts of the country.
Does everybody lie about their age on dating sites? If I create
Yes.
a profile with my real age, will everyone assume I am 3 years older?
I have watched 40,000 people lie to me. Men lie about their height and how much money they make. Women lie about their weight and how old they are. It seems, I would almost say it's almost instinctual. I mean, I just think of what's her name? She said, it's better to be looked over than overlooked. Mae West. It's
Okay.
better to be looked over than overlooked. And so people, will hope that they can capture your attention with a little fudging around the edges and then have you fall in love with them and then you come clean with your age or whatever. So some people handle this very differently than others do. But I've seen a lot of people lie about their age. Absolutely. Lie about their age, lie about their weight, lie about their money, and lie about their height. Big ones.
And they also, I mean, I did an article on this and you contributed, but so I asked a psychiatrist, why do people lie? And I say, nobody wants to write that they sit home and watch TV and eating bonbons. So you see, I mean, the women who are on these sites, they're exhausting because they're always A lot of them write, try and stay up with me. And they're skiing, they're bungee jumping, they're doing all kinds of things. And I doubt they do that all the time, but they're skiing, they're bungee jumping, they're doing Pilates, they're doing yoga. And I'm thinking, when the hell do they even sit down?
Right.
So,
Well, men lie just as much, you know. I mean, I don't generally say this, but courtship is really not about honesty. Courtship is about winning. That's what it's about. It's about winning. And you're trying to win life's greatest prize, which is a mating partner. So there's every reason to scrimp around the edges. And yeah, it's I'm not surprised.
Okay. So do you recommend?
I know one thing I wanted to say about it. Anthropologists use the word mate value. And what they're doing is they're upping their mate value. They're signaling more than who they are.
Do you recommend that women shave off a few years? I guess for
I'm not
purposes?
in the should business. I just don't get into it. I'm in the business of how come instead of how to. I'm more and more into how to, but
okay.
I wouldn't. How about you? Would you recommend it?
The people lie?
Yeah.
No.
I wouldn't either.
Because you're going to tell
a person. Maybe we're signaling too. I mean, are we being honest? It's a good question.
But I guess some people say I lower my age for search purposes, because let's say someone says I'm not going to go out with someone who's over 60 or over 50, so they say they're 48. So if I see someone who says 49 or 59 or 39, I assume they're probably 40 or whatever.
Or 42 or
something like that. Why don't the sites require a minimum of 2 pictures? I think most sites with 1 picture are scams. I don't know.
Well, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know, but don't forget that men and women have been scamming each other for 4 million years. I mean, this isn't the first time that people are making their feathers prettier. And some people only put in 1 picture because they're just so bad at getting a picture and then getting the picture on the site. So I would not intuitively believe that all people who have only 1 picture are scamming you. That doesn't ring true. That's the first thing that doesn't ring true to me.
Okay, so here's one. Should one trust one's first gut reaction about whether the other person is attractive, or can that change over time?
That's a beautiful question. And we ask that all the time. And we ask it so many different years. One year we asked, have you ever eventually fallen in love with somebody who you initially did not find attractive? And one year it was 40% of people said yes. Another year it was 35% of people said yes. Another was 29% of people that said yes. So yes. It's absolutely possible to even go out with somebody for quite a while and then suddenly trigger that brain circuitry for romantic love. Suddenly you realize more about their sense of humor. Suddenly you have a very dire situation and they save the day. Sometimes then you begin to meet some of their friends who really admire them. And as you get to know somebody, you can eventually fall madly in love with them. What's interesting is I really like this piece of data. Over 50% of singles don't even expect to feel any chemistry on the first date. And I think a little bit less don't even expect it on the second or third date. So singles are more savvy. They're not expecting love at first sight. But over 50% of singles have experienced love at first sight. And that doesn't surprise me because it's a basic brain system, can be triggered anytime. But no, singles are pretty savvy, and a great many of them fall madly in love with somebody way down the road.
So someone wrote, as a writer, I have to disagree with you about having someone else write a profile. Wouldn't want to think I'm meeting someone who can write well, only found out later they can't even compose a coherent email. Well, that's not really a question, but
well, let me just respond anyway. I'm not suggesting that they write the profile. I'm suggesting that they help you show your good points.
And they can proof it for you also, because people are notoriously bad at proofing their own stuff. it's hard to proof your own stuff because your mind looks at what you think should be there. Okay. Do you feel that approaching dating with a strong sense of humor and amusement is healthy, or does it predispose one toward discounting the value of a potential match?
There are 5 basic things, and overnight, I've asked this for 10 years in a row. I got data on 50,000 people,
Okay.
and I've asked, what are you looking for? And there's about 25 boxes. You can check whatever box you want. The 5 top things that Americans, men and women of all ages, gay, straight, rural, suburban, urban, black, white, Asian, Latino, all of them. There's just no variation in this every year. First thing they want is somebody who respects them. Second, they want somebody who they can trust and confide in. The third is somebody who has a very good sense of humor. And also the last 2, somebody who makes enough time for them and somebody whom they find physically attractive. So sense of humor is very high on the list of things that both men and women are looking for a very good reason. When you laugh with somebody, you're driving up the endorphins as a painkiller. You're boosting the immune system. You're driving up the dopamine system, which gives energy, focus, motivation, optimism. A good playing with somebody helps builds brain growth in areas of planning and decision making. So laughter and play are really important in a partnership. And of course, psychologically, people who are, who've got a good sense of humor, I mean, it can smooth over very bad situations. It can pull the whole group in and coordinate people. It's just one of mankind's greatest pain relievers and to get over arguments, etc. So I'm not surprised that it's something that is very valuable to both men and women.
I mean, I think also that you should approach it, a little bit lightly. I mean, I have a friend, he meets someone and the person said, I text the person I liked him, they didn't text me back. And he's like shattered. And I said, you met this person for 20 minutes. You have absolutely no idea what's going on. Maybe they're mad at their boyfriend. Maybe they just, I don't want to say maybe they didn't find you attractive to him, but you don't know. But it's
I completely agree with you. Not only that, but sense of humor can come out very slowly.
Yeah.
I mean, in the beginning of a relationship, people are anxious.
Yeah.
And they're looking, as I said, for life's greatest prize, a mating partner. It is life's greatest prize because that's the person you're going to send your DNA on with to tomorrow. So there's an awful lot of people who are extreme, and men are just as anxious as women are. And, it's hard to be hilariously funny when you're not very relaxed. And I did a whole study of sense of humor, and there's different kinds of humor. And there's sarcasm, and there's bathroom humor, and there's puns, and there's wit. The vast majority of people are most attracted to somebody who's witty.
Okay. So what about people? I mean, I don't tend to reproduce anymore. I have 2 kids, and I don't think you would plan to. So how does that play into finding a mate at an older age?
What's interesting about that is that
companionship, yeah.
Yeah, it's more than companionship. It's funny. I did this study of seniors. I'm very interested because I'm a senior, and these are my 2 favorite. Don't let me go too far off the line here. I want to answer this question, but the bottom line is this was a question that I've really liked. It said, would you make a long-term commitment to somebody who had everything you were looking for, but you were not in love with them? And the second question is, would you make a long-term commitment to somebody who had everything you were looking for, but you did not find them sexually attractive? The least likely to compromise are people over 60.
Okay.
The least likely. It's the young that compromise because, once again, they got to find somebody who's going to help them raise babies. Back to the question, why older people are looking for, they're not only looking for, the bottom line is they're not only looking for companionship, they are looking for sex, they're looking for romance, they're looking for partnership in many ways. And when I was writing one of my books on this, Why Him, Why Her, Why We Love, I said, why does this brain system for romantic love continue after the years of reproduction? I mean, why would that happen? And it's because you're going back to hunters and gatherers again. You know, romantic love gives you energy and focus and motivation and enthusiasm. That's a good thing to have in the hunting and gathering group. So if an older person, they've already had their children, they're not going to reproduce again, but they fall madly in love with somebody, they're going to be more better members of the band. Going to have more energy, more vitality. They're going to have somebody to help care for them if they're sick. So these brain systems for romantic love and attachment, they're separate brain systems, and the sex drive, third brain system, they continue throughout the ages because they're multi-purpose systems. They're not only good for having babies, but they're very good for keeping you young afterwards. As a matter of fact, it's new data that I read about a month ago. If you are in a good relationship with romance and attachment, if you are in a good relationship, it slows the aging process.
Well,
Therefore,
also,
these brain systems have remained for good Darwinian evolutionary reasons of survival.
so someone said to me, "Why?" You know, I read that, you know, married people live longer. I said, "Yeah, if you're choking, you know, on your food, there's someone there." You know, but if you're having a heart attack, they can call the police. You know? So yeah,
That's a good way to look at it, and it's true. But not only that, but relationships really are good for you.
Yeah.
You know, some data shows that people in a good relationship live 5 to 7 years longer, and maybe that is because of this new data. It slows the aging process. So, yeah, we're built to love, kids. We're built to love.
Okay, good to know. All right, so I want to thank before I just want to say next week I'm interviewing the author of Radiant. The book is The Dancer, the Scientist, and the scientist is Marie Curie, and A Friendship Forged in Light. And it's a true story, historical novel by Liz Heinecke, who does all these scientific, she's known as a kitchen scientist, does scientific experiments in kitchen for kids and writes books. So that should be a lot of fun. So when you have a new, you said you're going to write a book on questions. You want to talk about that?
On myths, you mean?
I'm sorry?
On myths about romance?
Yes, yeah, yes.
Yeah, eventually I will do just that. I've got over 100 of them.
Give us one.
The myth that women are more romantic than men. Men
Okay.
fall in love sooner because they're more visual. They fall in love more often. When they meet somebody that they're in love with, they want to move in sooner. Men have more intimate conversations with their partners than women do with theirs, because women have their intimate conversations with their girlfriends, and men are 2.5 times more likely to kill themselves when a relationship is over. So men are the more fragile sex when it comes to romance. Nobody gets out of love alive. We all struggle.
I will keep that in mind. Okay, I want to thank Helen Fisher for spending time with us, and maybe in a few months we'll talk again and see what's new.
Wonderful, David.
And I'm glad we're all vaccinated. And again, congratulations on being married.
Yeah, isn't that something?
Thanks again, everyone out there. Stay safe, and we'll see you next week. Okay, take care.
And thank you.
Good night.